So I've been seeing this particular comment in the last few days. There are different versions of it that has come up. In fact, some of the commenters, I actually do remember your your YouTube username. Delusions of Grandeur, you were one of the people who actually put that. You said, in your estimation, you heard that there were, some PlayStation consoles that hadn't been turned on. Another user here, I'm better than I was yesterday, shout out to you. You said 45 million consoles are connected to PSN, 10 million haven't been switched on. So I started looking around. I was thinking to me, this is a very curious thing. And if I see this comment one more time without knowing the context, I'm going to lose my mind. Did a little Google search, and one article from Riley Housden of Medium from 3 years ago came up. This particular article is titled, "Approximately 25% of all PS5 consoles in circulation have never been used." Now, this was written 3 years ago, even a little longer, but we're trying to see what's going on here. I've always been curious about the conversion rate of the, PlayStation games. Now, yes, I don't know exactly how we look at the conversion rate for Xbox games because we don't really see a lot of figures. But PlayStation, having, in quote, been the, in quote, console leader, even though Nintendo was smacking everybody, I don't know how PlayStation fans came up with that. That was the weirdest thing. When people say things like that, I got to go back and look and say, man, you really stepped over 150 million Nintendo consoles to get to that conclusion, which has got to hurt. Imagine if each Nintendo console was a spike, you would have no feet anymore because of all of that mental gymnastics that you did, over that. But the conversion rates of these PlayStation console games, exclusives, are very telling about something. It's either these, guys are not even interested in any of these games. They're in droves buying Call of Duty. Call of Duty will sell 14, 15 million on PlayStation. If you even think about even the numbers now, I'm betting that they're probably pushing 20 million in terms of just PlayStation sales alone, because the last numbers that we saw with the FTC trial was about that much. But then you think about the other side too, where most of these games that you're seeing in terms of their conversion, for example, God of War Ragnarok has access to the PS4. So it's selling 15 million copies around that, 1 year mark or so was a little interesting because that's 150 million consoles. The conversion rate being around 7 to 8%, maybe 12%, depending on if you want to, do a linear estimate. And I was thinking to myself, how is Nintendo doing this while, PlayStation struggles to do this? There are many factors involved, but still the numbers have been a little weird. This is why I jumped in to find out what in the world is going on. So this particular article, they went ahead to calculate what they thought was the way they were able to figure out which consoles were, on and which consoles weren't. So in looking at Sony's financials, they went ahead to conclude at this time about, 9 million consoles were sold. And then they used, I think it was Astro's Playroom or something. They said to figure out how many consoles were collecting dust in a corner, waiting to be sold rather than being used by players, a My PS4 Life scenario would need to occur. If you're unfamiliar with this event, you can find more information on this Reddit thread, which we're going to go look at. A quick explanation is that the PS4 released personalized stats to players on their top games, explaining how many people had achieved a specific trophy. With this knowledge and the PS Network's achievement percentages, anyone could calculate the total players for any game by leveraging a simple formula. Total game players equals total receiving achievement divided by percentage receiving achievement. While there's not been a widespread event like this for PS5 games, there currently exists a way to calculate total number of users for the launch titles Astro's Playroom. Astro's Playroom is specifically intriguing because not only is it arguably one of the top 5 exclusives currently available, but because it's included for free with every console. Sony wanted to prove the capabilities of the PS5 controller with this title, and in my opinion, Astro's Playroom did an exemplary job putting those features on display. However, PlayStation seemed to unveil something else during Astro's Playroom, the total number of worldwide players interacting with the game. We can calculate this amount in a similar way to the My PS4 Life formula by looking at the percentage completion for a particular trophy in the game. So they went ahead and ran these numbers. This is actually very interesting. This My PS4 Life thing was also another thing where they actually, went ahead and unveiled the trophy numbers. And I remember this back in the day. People were, basically thinking, oh, wow, this is crazy. Some people saw some numbers like FIFA. This is cool. FIFA has crazy numbers. The Walking Dead had like 35,800. So no wonder Telltale shut down. This is before they kind of got revamped again. Saw the Batman Arkham logo and Sony accidentally and briefly got hyped that a new Arkham, game was coming out. Through my video, I calculated there are 98,612 players for LA Noir. People were looking and seeing these numbers. It was interesting for people to be able to get the sense of how many players were playing these numbers. So having gone ahead to take a look at all of what was going on and the approximation, they went ahead to realize that at least about 10 million or so, well, I guess 25%, that was a percentage they came up with, had not necessarily been turned on in terms of these, PlayStation consoles. They went ahead and said, every console is owned and used by a single person. This is pretty much another optimistic statement. And then they went ahead to do some more calculations. And I think this particular data set, in my opinion, I think it has a lot of merits to it. Now, you could dismiss it. There's nothing wrong with that. But they said this: we're missing a single piece of information, the average number of players per active console. However, we can assume this range has a natural bound at the bottom at 1, which refers to the best case scenario. In this scenario, each console has only one account attached to it, meaning that 23% of consoles are sitting around unused. This translates to about 2 million consoles. One of the pessimistic side, we could take a stab at how many consoles are shared by multiple users. If we assume that 1 out of 10 consoles have 2 users, then the average player count is 1.1. If we divide this modifier, we get 30% of consoles sitting around unused, equating to 2.65 million consoles. While we could debate the exact number of players per console, it isn't too drastic to assume that 2 to 3% of consoles are being used by multiple accounts. Therefore, we arrive at our original statement that 25% of consoles are currently collecting dust. If we take that estimate and look at today, I don't necessarily think we will be too shocked that a specific percentage is basically sitting there. I think this may also lend to the, conversation right now that if you kind of think about it, these game sales are reflecting that something is missing. Now, granted, a lot of these gamers that are playing on these consoles are busy playing Call of Duty, busy playing Epic Games' Fortnite, EA's FIFA, and so on and so forth. So that could be the simple explanation. Also, when you kind of, narrow it down, these data sets are, very interesting at the end of the day, and we don't necessarily see sales. But I think it's very interesting. Remember that Call of Duty data that said, that actually had the numbers over 1 million people exclusively playing Call of Duty 100% of their time on the console, meaning once they fire up the console, it's only Call of Duty they play anytime, every time. That kind of number may have also increased, but by what factor, we're not really certain. The console generation is halfway in, and they've brought out many Call of Duty games, so perhaps that's probably where you're seeing that happen. Then you also have the EA's FIFA, which almost always knocks it out the park, and then a college football game that sold many, many consoles, and people are still playing. So I think there are many factors here that are eating into PlayStation exclusives that at the end of the day, when you're surprised or shocked about how they're doing, you find yourself in a position where it's like, okay, I get it. At this point in time, we're just in that scenario and in that position where PlayStation really needs to figure out how its hardware sales are translating into its software sales. Its games are very expensive now. So with the new expensive games, I think that is even going to, become much interesting, to say the least. But it is, just a look at what this is all about. That number of 10 million, I haven't seen it anywhere yet. If there's an article, somebody link it to me. I know YouTube's going to filter links, but, you can maybe modify the link in a way I can probably parse it together. So thanks so much for watching the video. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.